All right, everybody, get ready because today we're tackling a career path that often gets a bad rap. Debt collection. We've got some really interesting resources from RoleCatcher, and you've come to the right place if you want to know what this line of work is really all about.
Yeah, their career guide is packed with insights and will also dig into their interview prep materials and job search tools.
Hmm.
Should give us and you a complete picture of how to break into this field and succeed.
Something that jumped out at me right away from the guide was this whole idea of debt collectors as solving financial puzzles. It's not exactly the first thing that pops into my head when I hear debt collection. What are these puzzles they're talking about, and how do debt collectors actually go about solving them?
It's a really good question. And it shows how this job is about way more than just, chasing people down for money. So picture this. A debt collector is working with someone who just lost their job, right? A financial puzzle in that situation might be figuring out a payment plan that works with their new budget. Maybe negotiating a pause on payments for a bit, or even looking into things like debt consolidation. It's all about really getting their situation, exploring different options, and finding solutions that work on both sides.
So it's this balancing act almost between being firm but also empathetic. You have rules to work within, but you're also trying to help someone who's probably going through a tough time.
Hit the nail on the head. And the RoleCatcher Guide really emphasizes that this balancing act requires a pretty unique set of skills. They actually highlight active listening and persuasion just as much as, say, being good with numbers. Basically, debt collectors need to understand the people behind the debt, not just the debt itself.
Makes sense. You can't really solve a problem without understanding where it's coming from, right? Now, the guide also mentioned how technology is changing the game for debt collectors. We hear about fintech all the time, but what's its impact been in this specific area?
It's completely changing how debt is managed and collected, honestly. Think way beyond just spreadsheets, though those are still around, I'm sure. We're talking sophisticated software now, like customer relationship management systems, CRM. They let debt collectors keep track of every interaction they have, manage payment plans, even analyze how people are communicating so they can tailor their approach for each person.
So instead of some one-size-fits-all approach, they're using tech to make the whole experience more personalized.
Exactly. And get this, there are even AI-powered tools now that can predict which debtors are most likely to actually engage, help optimize communication strategies, and even take over those routine tasks like sending payment reminders. This frees up debt collectors to focus on the more complicated cases that really need a human touch.
Sounds like you need to be pretty tech-savvy these days to really thrive in this line of work.
No doubt about it. Gone are the days of just a phone and a Rolodex. To be a successful debt collector today, you got to be comfortable with all sorts of software, able to adapt to new technologies constantly. It's a learning curve, for sure.
It really is amazing to see how much technology is changing the game in this field. But, let's bring it back to that human element for a minute. The RoleCatcher Guide also gets into the nitty-gritty of what qualifications and skills you need to actually succeed as a debt collector. Anything in there that surprised you?
Well, one thing that really stood out was just how much they emphasize communication skills. You might think this is all about numbers, but the guide makes it clear that being a strong communicator, both when you're talking to someone and when you're writing, that's really essential.
Which makes sense when you think about it. You're not just dealing with data points, you're dealing with real people, and they're often in a pretty vulnerable position.
That's exactly it. Being able to break down complicated financial stuff in a way that's both clear and empathetic, that's key. In fact, the guide even gave some specific examples of what kinds of questions to expect in a debt collector interview.
Oh yeah, that's right. They have that whole section on how to ace the interview process. What sort of questions were they highlighting?
A lot of them were what they call behavioral questions, the kind that are trying to figure out how you've handled tough situations in the past.
So how you react under pressure.
Exactly. Like they mentioned, one question that comes up a lot is, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer and how you resolved the situation. They're really trying to see if you can stay calm, professional, and focused on solutions even when things get a little heated.
So it's about showing you can navigate those tricky interpersonal situations.
Absolutely. Another question they brought up was, how do you stay up to date on debt collection laws and regulations? Which just goes to show how important compliance is in this field.
Yeah, you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of the law when you're trying to collect a debt.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about knowing the rules. It's about showing potential employers that you take it seriously, that you're all over it. The guide even recommended getting familiar with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA.
Which, if I'm remembering correctly, lays out everything that's considered ethical and legal when you're collecting debts.
You got it. Knowing the FDCPA inside and out, that's non-negotiable for anyone thinking about this line of work. It protects people from harassment and makes sure debt collectors are playing by the rules, being fair.
And speaking of playing by the rules, I was really impressed with how RoleCatcher goes above and beyond just giving you information. They have tools to actually help you practice and sharpen your skills.
Right. Their AI-powered practice features are amazing. They have this tool that actually simulates a video interview so you can record yourself answering those common interview questions and then see how you did. Plus, they've got an AI resume builder that analyzes your resume and compares it to actual job descriptions you're interested in.
It's like having your own personal career coach in your back pocket. Knowing what you're supposed to do is one thing, but having tools to actually practice and get better, that's huge.
Absolutely. It really speaks to RoleCatcher's commitment to giving job seekers practical stuff they can actually use.
Now, I know we've touched on some of their job search tools already, but I wanted to circle back to their jobs module and the RoleCatcher.capture plugin. Can you break those down for us a little more?
For sure. The jobs module is basically a central hub for anyone on the job hunt. It pulls together job listings from all different job boards, so you don't have to waste time bouncing around from site to site. And that's where their RoleCatcher.capture plugin comes in. It lets you grab jobs from those other boards and save them right to your RoleCatcher account.
So no more emailing links to yourself or trying to remember which tab you had open. It keeps everything nice and organized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you can use all the other RoleCatcher tools, like we were talking about the resume builder, the interview prep, to really make your application stand out for each specific job.
It's like a one-stop shop for everything you need to launch or even advance your career in debt collection.
Exactly. Oh, and we can't forget about their Get Discovered feature, which lets employers actually find you based on your skills and experience. That's huge for getting your name in front of companies that are actively hiring.
So it's like having a digital headhunter working for you in the background.
Pretty much. And the great thing is you get to decide. You can turn that feature on or off whenever you want.
I like that it gives you more control. It sounds like RoleCatcher really wants to put job seekers in the driver's seat, which is great, especially in such a competitive job market. You know, after this deep dive, I have to say, I have a whole new appreciation for what debt collectors do. It's definitely more nuanced than a lot of people realize.
I totally agree. We've seen how it takes a mix of financial know-how, communication skills, and tech savviness.
Yeah.
Not to mention a good dose of empathy. You're dealing with complicated situations, understanding the rules, but also the human side of debt. And at the end of the day, you're trying to help people get back on solid financial ground.
And that takes us back to something the RoleCatcher guide mentioned early on about the public perception of this whole field. There's no denying debt collection doesn't exactly have the best reputation. So how can someone going into this line of work try to challenge those perceptions and really make a positive impact?
That's a big question, and I think it starts with a shift in mindset. It's about treating every interaction with respect and trying to understand the situation, remembering that there's a real person on the other end of that phone call or email.
So leading with empathy, but still being effective, how do you find that balance?
It's a tough one, no doubt. But the guide talked a lot about focusing on transparency and communication. If you can clearly explain the process, be upfront about the options, and work with the person to figure things out, that goes a long way in building trust, even when it's a stressful situation. It's about being an advocate, not just coming down hard on them.
I see what you mean. It's about changing the story from one that's all about confrontation to one that's more about problem solving and working together.
Exactly. And being a voice for ethical practices within the industry, that's huge too. If you're championing fair debt collection, pushing back against those predatory lending practices, that can really help change how the whole profession is seen from the inside out.
That's a powerful thought. It's a big challenge for sure, but it's also a real opportunity for someone who's passionate about making a difference in this field. Totally. And it seems like RoleCatcher really does give you a strong foundation, whether you're just starting out or you're looking to level up in your debt collection career. They give you the tools, the knowledge, and hopefully you bring the right intentions.
Absolutely. All right, folks. That's our deep dive into the world of debt collection. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the skills you need to the challenges you might face to the totally unexpected ways technology is changing how it all works. Hopefully, this is giving you a new perspective on a career path that often gets misunderstood.
And if anything we talked about today piqued your interest, definitely check out RoleCatcher. Their resources could be your secret weapon for unlocking your potential in the world of debt collection.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to change the industry for the better. That's all the time we have for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. It really does feel like they've got your back.
Yeah, totally. They really seem to get it. And it's not just about finding any job, it's about finding the right fit, I
Right,
say.
absolutely. And having all the info and resources you need to make that happen. Well, after this deep dive, I have to admit, I'm looking at debt collection in a whole new light. It's definitely more complex than it gets credit for, pun intended.
I see what you did there. But seriously, it's true. We've seen how it takes this interesting blend of financial smarts, communication skills, and being comfortable with technology. And let's not forget that empathy piece that's huge.
For sure. You're not just dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet. You're dealing with people's lives, their livelihoods.
Exactly. And that actually brings us back to something the guide touched on earlier, which is how the public views this whole profession. Debt collection, let's be real, it doesn't exactly have the best reputation. So for someone who's drawn to this line of work, how can they challenge those perceptions and actually make a positive difference?
It's a great question because, just dismissing those negative perceptions isn't really enough. So how do you change the narrative?
Right. It's not about pretending it doesn't exist. I think it starts with a real shift in mindset, honestly. It's about approaching each interaction, whether it's on the phone or through email, with respect and a genuine desire to understand where the other person is coming from. Because at the end of the day, there's a human being on the other side of that debt.
It's about remembering the human element, but at the same time, you have a job to do. So how do you balance that empathy with, being effective in your role?
It's a tough balance, no doubt.
hmm
But the guide had some good advice there. They talked a lot about focusing on transparency and clear communication. So explaining the process in a way that makes sense, being upfront about what the options are, and really working with the person to find solutions that work. That can make a huge difference in building trust, even when it's a difficult conversation.
It's more about collaboration than confrontation.
Exactly. And advocating for ethical practices within the industry itself, that's massive. Because if you're pushing for fair debt collection, speaking out against those predatory lending practices, that can really start to change how the whole profession is perceived.
It's about being a force for good from within. That's a powerful message. It's definitely a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity for someone who's passionate about this field and wants to make a real difference.
I couldn't agree more. And, it seems like RoleCatcher is really committed to equipping people to do just that. They give you the tools, the knowledge, the support. They set you up for success. And then it's up to you to bring the right attitude, the right approach.
To bring the human touch. Well said.
All right, everyone. That wraps up our deep dive into the world of debt collection. We've explored the ins and outs of this often misunderstood career path, uncovered the skills you need to thrive, and seen how technology is changing the game in some pretty amazing ways.
And if you're feeling inspired, I'd definitely encourage you to check out RoleCatcher. Their resources could be the key to unlocking your own potential in this field. It's time to put everything we've learned into action. That's all the time we have for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.